You're about to enjoy a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands.
Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the SheEO Lead-In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of SheEO. We are on an exploration together to discover more about the personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights despite their sometimes rocky paths and found a way to lead in. And my guest today is Dr. Ellen Neufeldt. She is the president of CSU San Marcos. So let me rephrase that. President Ellen Neufeldt of CSU San Marcos. So, Dr. Neufeldt, could you please share a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you're at as president of CSU San Marcos?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. And, I think if I could just say, Rebecca, it's so fitting that you're doing this. I mean, you are such an example for leaders everywhere, regardless of of gender, but really an inspiration to women especially. So this is perfect. But to share a little bit about me, obviously, I'm in higher education, and I really have to always remember just how fortunate I am to be in such a purposeful profession. And I sometimes say that I was one of the lucky ones that was literally born into it. My father was getting his PhD at Michigan State when I surprised the family. The third of three daughters, which is what they needed, was one more child living in married housing, going to school. But so I literally was born into my profession, which I don't know that everybody gets to say. But for me, I know that I have so much that I owe to my parents' journey, because my grandparents were immigrants that came to Canada. And their first language was German. So my parents' first language was German. And, going to college was never something that was on their mind. They grew up on a farm, but my father wanted to go to college. And my mother really helped make that possible too. They were a real team. And I know that because of that journey that he took as a first generation college student with my mother's support, all the way through, that helped me on my road. I wouldn't be a university president without him making really those first such a big leap. So he grew up in British Columbia, and so here he ended up at Michigan State getting his PhD. And so I went to a campus, literally what back then we called a nursery school. I went on the campus to an elementary school, and I would walk to campus. I went to what we call junior high, which is middle school. And I would walk to campus and get paid $1 an hour for student teachers to come in. And I was along with some other students that walked over from the junior high. We were their pretend students for $1 an hour. So that was my first job. So for me, I really have been so fortunate. And one of the things that's really been a passion for me is really working around social mobility. I know that the gift that my father had and his perseverance, that was, that not only changed his life, but all of his family's life. And so we know when a first generation student can graduate from college, it's just a ripple effect through communities. And so it is a passion of mine. So I grew up with international students at Thanksgiving dinner, or being in my mom's office where she worked in the electrical engineering department as an administrative assistant. And she put in such effort and she had the few female engineering students that were in the department were work studies students in her office. So she really mentored them, and they in turn mentored me. So she was such an inspiration to those female students. So that has just been part of the family. I went to college in Tennessee. So here, my family eventually moved to Tennessee, where my father was a professor. And I went to college in Tennessee, and we did not fit in easily. But we went to, so I went to college in Tennessee. And then when I graduated, I had a business degree, and I was a department store manager for about 5 minutes, actually a little over 2 years. And then I went back to school for my master's, and I was a crisis counselor for a bit. So I helped people that were feeling suicidal or maybe just couldn't care for themselves. I helped them find the right care or hospitalization. And then after I got my master's, I wanted to be in higher ed, and there were just no jobs. And I just couldn't seem to break into the profession. And one day somebody called, and I got an interview in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And this was a while ago, but they had to hire a female, and they had failed the search. They had not been able to find a female for this job. And I had applied, but I wasn't qualified, but they needed a female. And so they called me and I came in for an interview, and I got the job. And so I was the only female in the office, and really was kind of like what we used to think of as a dean of women. And eventually I worked my way up from UT Chattanooga to being a vice president at a university called Salisbury University in Maryland, and then eventually at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And when I was at ODU, I had the opportunity to start a national center around social mobility, really pulling in the data of how we help students find their way into higher education, and really what they can do when they graduate. And so when I learned about the job here at Cal State San Marcos, and what this university did and how it grew up with the community and the support, it was like a dream come true. So I applied, and never thought in a million years that I would get the opportunity to be the 4th president here, but was so excited to hear the news 18 months ago that I got to come at a university that really had grown up with the community, 30 years young and so vibrant, and has so many wonderful people that were supporting everything that the university did and its students. One of the things that's really special to me about being at Cal State San Marcos is it's not just about student success when students graduate, but as I went on a listening and learning tour, it was about what students did to support the community and to support each other upon graduation. How they participated and engaged in their community is such a big part of what the university is about. So I know that even though we've been through COVID and so many difficult times, and I'm so lucky when I get up in the morning to be in a purposeful profession at such a special place. It means a lot. And being here doing the podcast, you help remind me just how lucky I am every day. Every day doesn't feel lucky right now for any of us if you're a human being, but I know that not everybody gets the opportunity to really live and work in their passion, and I do. And I don't take that for granted any day of the week.
Well, Ellen, I think with your social background, your social mobility, and then also your crisis counseling background, I think you are uniquely perfect for this job. Not even just normally, but right now, I think you are just well equipped to do what you're doing. And 18 months into the job, I was trying to think back how long it's been that you've been at CSU. You've been doing a wonderful job. I love in North County how you have really immersed yourself into the different communities and really found out what the community needs and what the community wants. And you've really adapted to all of that. And I just really want to give you kudos for that.
Oh, thank you.
And I know that one of the things that CSU is kind of known for is the first generation the kids that have now graduated and now they're out making their mark on the community. Can you tell us, me and then also our listeners, what is that number? Because I remember it being very high. And then also the number of how many kids are staying within the community after they are graduating.
Yeah. So we are, any given year, we're over 16 to 17,000 students. And when we did a survey, 8 out of 10 tell us they stay right here in the community and work and participate in the community. So that is, many universities have different missions, so that's not that one's good and one's bad, but that far and away outweighs what happens at many universities is how connected people are here. And, we've got around 50,000 alums now, but it's growing exponentially because, the first class was maybe 400. And now if we think about the classes that come through. So I love the mission of the university being a university of place. And, you talk about, you're so kind in the words you said about me, but you and the other mayors and the people of this community, you don't always see people so ready to partner and understanding how when we work together, it can make such a difference. It's just a pleasure to work with leaders like you. And the way you and the mayors work together to come together. And I've appreciated my times when I get to come to Innovate 78 and see the synergy that's happening. It's just better for our community when we all pull together.
Well, I think having a university such as CSU and providing the workforce and the talent for North County and all of San Diego County is so important. And I love, now that there's going to be that new hospital just adjacent to CSU, Kaiser Permanente. I love that you are, providing a lot of that talent and really partnering with Kaiser. And, that's, back to the collaborative efforts that I think have really significantly shifted. Not that they weren't close prior to your coming on board, but I think in this 18 months, we're a year into a pandemic, and you still continue to bring these different efforts together. I really appreciate that. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
So how do you personally measure success in your career?
For me, I think there's something that's tangible and intangible all at the same time is really seeing commencement. And I have had, at universities usually have multiple commencements at one time. So you think, gosh, wouldn't you get tired of that? And it's not that you're not tired at the end of it, but I have every commencement is special. Even when you've done several days in a row, it's special. And to see the students that are graduating, and usually I don't know every student that walks across the stage. But I'll catch out of the corner of my eye a student coming that I've known for one reason or another. And sometimes they were that individual's on a journey that I don't think any of us were sure how it would turn out. But when they overcome and graduate, that's one simple thing in my profession that is just says it all. And like I said, it's both tangible and intangible. We can count our graduates, absolutely. But I think but also it's just to see and feel it. And the car parade, I wasn't commencement, it had to be my favorite graduation because you could see the tears in the family members' eyes and how many family members could fit in a car and all of that. In a broader sense for me, defining success is really how, and whatever piece of the higher education world that I'm in, the impact that's made going back to social mobility. Higher education, it wasn't something that was created to be bluntly accessible. It was created for a few. And I choose to be at universities that where it's created for many, and so that means changing the system and reworking it. And universities used to be in and of themselves not connected and integrated into the community. So some of that definition of success for me is really changing the fabric of higher education to make sure it's not only accessible, but that students can succeed, graduate, and serve in their community. That to me, and that is long cultural change that has to happen across higher ed, but really thrives here at CSUSM.
Well, so I think at CSU, and probably any higher learning educational opportunity, you've got faces and you've got stories, right? When you talked about graduation and all the different faces that you saw under the very different circumstances, but each one of those cars that came through were families and stories. Right. And so I think, having those stories, and they're all always very unique. My niece graduated a couple of years ago from CSU, one of the first in her family. And, just to see her, so excited, so happy. And she's actually now going through the nursing program. And, just those opportunities. And I love that is near and dear to your heart, because I think that's a very important part of leadership, is not just always looking at the big vision, but remembering also those stories and those people.
It's about each individual. You talk about the parade. The first car that came through had a graduate that was 10 years in the making to complete his degree, and he had his children in the car, and he was the very first car that came through that parade. Or I met a CSU award winner, Kayla Nugent, and I spoke about her in the State of the University address. She went through a family illness which derailed her college journey and almost completely, and she found her way back, and she's got intelligence, grit, just staying power of all that she brings, and she tapped into the resources that we have to help her through. And so despite her mother's illness, despite working 3 jobs, she's getting ready to go to graduate school, and she's had internship at Johnson & Johnson. I mean, she has all that talent and she is, she's going to do amazing things. One day cure all the diseases that we will, COVID maybe, that we will need help with. But it's just, you're right, it's student by student, and all they persevere and do. And then everybody has a special story.
Well, I love the fact, I want to ask you, what one word do you think describes you? Because, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all, but honestly, I see you as a cheerleader. A cheerleader
I don't take it derogatory at all.
No, a cheerleader for all these students that, coming from different circumstances. Of course, even just the one you just shared about, a student that was derailed because of illness and then able to come back and actually complete that education. And again, but I want to hear what your word is. But my word would be cheerleader, in the most respectful.
I take it in that way.
Yeah. So what do you think?
I think that's a good word. Actually, I think, one word, I would say I'm passionate for what I do. So that, it's always hard to think of one word, but I know it. Not everybody gets to work in an area that they feel has such purpose. So I have such a passion for it.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a situation where you didn't feel that maybe the support for you, or that there was resistance from men in the system? Because I'm sure, I experienced that too in my job. But I wonder, can you share how you overcame that? Because I think as, talking to young women that will be listening to this podcast, how is it that you dealt with it? Because this, I think, is very valuable information to encourage other women.
I am happy to talk about that. And I would say that, well, yes, I've experienced that. I also, some of my greatest mentors have been men. And so this is, not a blanket statement, but it is just a part of the way culturally in society, that has evolved, that kind of puts us in those positions. And I remember when I went to the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and I'm so grateful for the experiences I've had there, and can look back on it now. But I think I was the only female. I was a lot younger than my male colleagues, and I really, felt like I got patted on the head more times than I could count. And I didn't have, there were some really lonely times in that where I thought, I had just achieved, I'd just gotten a dream job, and a wonderful opportunity. And I had just left crisis counseling, and I missed crisis counseling because I had community there. And I was so lonely and felt so alone. And I'd watch, the mentorship between some of the men that just seemed more natural, take them to, a leader would take one of them to a conference or somewhere else, or introduce them or network them. And, that just wasn't available to me. And I really felt it. And there were times I was so lonely in that job. I reflect back now, and some of the, people that gave me an opportunity there, well, actually, one of my former supervisors there passed away from COVID on January 1st. And I still am having a hard time getting over that. So I also had men there. Obviously, it was mainly men there, but they gave me opportunities that put me on this journey. So I want to balance that, but it was very difficult. And you asked, how did I overcome it? Well, I didn't very well at first. I decided I was a victim for a while, bluntly, and that was not the answer, I will say. I don't know if anybody out there can relate to that, but I was like, this isn't fair, and in my own mind. And I didn't really have tools to overcome it. And that, now I think that's so important, is to think about what the tools are, what our agency is. As I've matured in my career, I still know that because of who I am and the affect I have and the way I present myself, that for some people they don't take that so seriously. They're not sure what I'm made of just yet, because leaders haven't always come in packages like ours, right? So but I've become very comfortable with, I am who I am, and I'm going to live who I am. I'm not perfect. I can make fun of myself, things. If I didn't, boy, life would get old quickly. If I stumble, I'm going to brush myself off. But I know that anywhere I go and introduce myself into the world, that for some culturally, I may appear soft. Or something like that. And let me just tell your listeners, I have a lot of grit, but my affect doesn't always expose that in the way we traditionally think about it. And so instead of trying to be something I'm not, I've just decided that time and action will tell. And we're going to just keep moving forward, but I'm going to be who I am. And I'm going to show this side of leadership for hopefully people that come behind me.
I love that. When you said leadership can be lonely, I think that is such an important thing to say. Actually, talking to other leaders, I've heard that a lot from women. And also the fact where you said that leaders don't always come in the same package that you have. And I think that is really important advice a really important message, because then you can take advice to help you through these things, right? Because every leader does look a little different. And being I would call you're bubbly, you're beautiful, you are funny.
Oh.
I like to make fun of myself as well. I think that's an important part of, I also have a lot of self-awareness that I know I'm not perfect. And I think that's important to be very transparent and talk about these things, because a lot of young women look up to people like us and other women, and they think, well, I maybe don't look like that. I don't act like that. And, I think leadership and women doing different jobs is always going to look different. And I try to encourage all of the young women and the youth that I speak to try something different, something that seems extremely difficult for them, something that stretches who they are.
Yes.
Because they may find that passion. And I think that passion, you're clearly very passionate about your job. I know all the discussions that I've had with you have really, exposed that this is part of who you are.
Yeah.
Part of you is helping people learn, helping people become their highest potential self, which is always something that I talk about as well. But, I think that this journey chose you from pretty early on. I think it was very clear that just your childhood and all of those things have really brought you on this path. And you're very passionate about your job. But can you name just one thing that you're most passionate about? And I think it may be equality, but it may not. So maybe one of the things that I think you're most passionate about your job and your career path.
I think it's as far as most passionate about my job is making sure that our students know that there is a place for them and that they can find themselves here and find their path. Going back a little bit, but far too long it was, are the students ready for us? No, it's about, are we ready for the students, and are we serving them and meeting them where they are? And that's not just traditional students. I know I chatted with you and the other mayors about people that are going to need help in this post-COVID moment. The world has changed. So that's not all about degrees. That may be about certificates. It may be, but helping people find that they have the place to be here, and that they are welcome here, and that it is not about them conforming to us, but that I'm passionate about making sure that we can help students find their place here.
And, we talk about that a lot during COVID, and that is, the evolution and the innovation and how things are going to look very different post-COVID. I don't believe that COVID will be our last pandemic.
No.
And so how do we deal with that and really continue to move forward in a very intentional way? And I think, there will be a lot of evolutions, I think, in healthcare itself. And how do we innovate out of this? Because I think, again, it's going to be an evolution. And so CSU and also the surrounding business community and healthcare community, how do you see that evolving? Are there things that are coming forward that you say, wow, we've never actually thought about that or done that, but that's now kind of coming to a head, and now we're seeing that there's an opportunity there for us to be part of a solution? Have you seen much of that?
Well, actually, higher ed is accused of not changing, and I think right now we've all been thrust into such change, and higher ed is a big part of that. But, when you talk about healthcare, the community, higher education, our business community, I think the interdependence will never be more important than it is now. So, we started a new innovation hub, maybe opened it 2 weeks before the pandemic and we went virtual, but it was not a perfect moment, that few are, but immediately they started, and really the focus of the innovation hub is on social innovation, how we can help better our greater community. And so they immediately started working with K-12 partners to see, where we even go in education. But to your point, working with healthcare systems to see what's next, even telehealth, the focus on how we educate for telehealth, biotech, and, we just started our engineering program and seeing what is needed there. So we're innovating. You can see the innovations in the way we're educating. In fact, one of our faculty who added gamification or courses was featured in Forbes, or the way the engineering, our engineering faculty found that students, once they got certain equipment into students' homes, they could do more projects instead of fewer, because there they were in their home and they had all these tools now that you don't normally put in a student's home. So that's going to now be something that they do into the future. But I think in working with our business community, we did a workshop with the San Diego EDC and the airport and Qualcomm coming together to talk about the future workforce and the needs. And we're going to be hosting with the EDC again, and Maricosta and the Community College District is, what is the next step for careers? And one of the things that has really highlighted itself in the pandemic is how people with college education have kept jobs and had opportunities and even advanced during the pandemic, and those that have not, unfortunately, has had disproportionately been unemployed. So making sure that we help those people find access some way, somehow. I think another innovation for us, just higher ed in general, is that our extended learning is going to be working even more closely with businesses to see, if there's, for lack of a better term, retooling or something that can be offered. So it doesn't have to be something that's been thought of 5 years ago, but what is it that we need right now that will help take us through and really help us and help the people that live in our community retool to be successful, which helps our region's economy, which helps us prosper.
So I have a question. Do you have any special programs that you've thought about that may be something that you could bring to CSU San Marcos for young women specifically? Not uniquely, but we do tend to have different jobs. We do tend to have boundaries that we try to stay within. Have you thought about anything like that? And I'm just thinking of this just because you kind of brought up, kind of where you're going with the university. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, it's funny you say that. I was having a meeting with Nancy Maldonado from the Chicano Federation. One of the things was about working mothers and what we needed to do to think about, what fit, especially right now with childcare being non-existent in the need when we're juggling so much. So what would fit to make sure that these working women could be, the right careers that fit to make them be productive and that may want to continue to telework after the pandemic. So what type of careers? And, even this may sound, but even we're looking at launching our undergraduate in cyber. Well, jobs like that in IT are great jobs in many cases where you can work from remotely. And we haven't always, I guess our society hasn't always shown females the way there, but they're in many ways perfect for someone that wants to do something, maybe not in a traditional work schedule, to stay at home and things like that. So thinking about the different jobs and where and how they offer the flexibility is, I don't know that we're thinking about specific majors that specifically attract women, but more about the way that you can use your degree in different ways to fit your life and your lifestyle.
Well, I love that because, well, for instance, so when I was 11, my parents got divorced. My mom had no skills. She didn't have an education, and she found herself doing, physical labor kind of jobs. And so I love that you're doing that. Now, I don't know how this would work, but now that you're bringing this up, I would love to see you reach out to different entities, groups of women to say, how do we roll out a program that fits you? And I know you've done an excellent job with this.
Oh, you're right on target.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's just talk about what you think your advice would be to the next generation of female leaders.
Well, one of the things as I was thinking about visiting with you today is I think there's a couple of things that come to mind that I think that I learned the hard way, I guess I would say, is you lead from where you are and who you are. Right. So, and I use this as a personal example. When I said earlier, I kind of felt lost and lonely when I first went to UT Chattanooga and isolated, but and some of that was a factor of gender and culture. Absolutely. But some of it was a factor of the fact that I didn't have agency to lead from where I was. And I like to only learn things the hard way. So for anybody out there, if I can't stumble a bit in the beginning, it's not a real lesson to me. And so, I think that there are, we can't control if it rains tomorrow. Well, here we really can't control if it rains or not, right? But we can't control the weather, but we can control how we react to the weather. And so we can't control, there's many things. I can't even, for all your listeners, my dog just knocked something over in the background. And yes, I'm coming to you from my home study, and he just decided he would wake up and make some noise. But we can't, many times we have to decide if we're going to be the people that happen to life or if life's going to happen to us. And I think that's really a key. And I'd say one other thing to that. It is, I remember I was mentoring someone who was interviewing for a job, and it was a female, and she said, I'm going to tell them that no matter how high they set the bar, I can reach it. And I said, then I don't think you should expect to get the job, because in the type of position you're applying for, it's about setting your own bar. And I think that's the thing, is we have to decide to set our own bar. And I don't mean to be quip that there aren't constraints in life, or that there aren't real issues right now that keep us from getting to where we want to be. And I fully get that happens. But as we think about our journey in leadership, is what is in that moment, that small moment where we can lead from where we are and set our own bar. And I think that's kind of the key that's helped me when I used to, hard times would happen, and I didn't really find any agency in it. Once I learned to find some agency, that made the difference for me.
Well, thank you so much. That is great advice, and great encouraging and inspirational advice also. Thank you so much, President Ellen Neufeldt from CSU San Marcos. And I wish you all the luck in your journey, and I can't wait to see what you do next over there.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say to everybody that is listening today, and all the women, you're right now walking through a difficult time that I could have never imagined earlier on in our lives. And just the fact that we're all still getting up in the morning shows that we are resilient and we're moving forward. So thank you.
We are. Thank you.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learn how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with SheEO host, Rebecca Jones.
You have been listening to a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands. Find more stories at cloudcast.us.